on Zion Aleph. The stove bases of householders which collapsed, if it was less than 3 hand tefachim, it is tummy. Since one heats up from below and the pot up above will cook. But if it was more than that, it was tahor. If one inserted a stone or a pebble, it is tahor. If he plastered it with clay, it will be susceptible to tumah from then on. And this was the response of Rabbi Yehuda regarding the oven that was placed over the mouth of a pit or over the mouth of a cistern. A shelf that has a receptacle for pots is tahor, and as a stove, but tameh as a utensil with a receptacle. Regarding its sides, that which touches the walls is not tameh as a stove. Regarding its width, its wide side, Rebbe rules the tahor, and Rebbe rules the tameh. The same applies if one turns over a basket and builds a stove on it. A stove that's split along its length is tahor, but a split along its width is tameh, and a kupak that's split either along its length or along its width is tahor. The courtyard of a stove, whether it's 3 tefachim high, it contracts tumah via contact and via airspace. But if it is less than this, then it contracts tumah through contact, via contact, but not contact tumah through airspace. How is it measured? Rabbi Yishmael says one places the spit on top to from top to bottom, and the area opposite the spit contracts tumah via airspace. If Eliezer ben Yaakov says that the stove became tameh, the courtyard becomes tameh. But if the courtyard becomes tameh, the stove does not become tameh.
Okay. So this is the courtyard that was attached to the stove. Right. Precious minakira. However, if it was separate from the stove, okay, is manshi gavoat shalosh etzbaos. So if it's 3 etzbaos high, if the room, hang on, when it is 3 fingers, I just realized I might have misunderstood this the first time I read it. Yeah, it is when the walls of the courtyard are 3 finger breadths high. Okay, then it can get its tumah from contact and airspace. Okay, as in the previous Mishna, the courtyard and stove are treated as one unit, and when either utensil contracts tumah in these ways, the tumah will spread to the other utensil as well. So since the courtyard and the stove are both heated by the same fire, the two are considered connected even though they're not cemented together.
Okay.
So that's the magic over here, is that even though there's no contact between the two, there's still contact of tumah between the two of them. Okay. But if it's less than it or if it's flat, then it is tahor. In other words, it's just hang on. It cannot both the stove and the courtyard still remain capable of contracting tumah on their own. That's interesting. Why is a flat? Okay, the ruling is the footnote says the ruling that a flat courtyard is tahor is self-evident. Once we know that the courtyard whose walls are less than 3 finger breadths high is tahor, then certainly a courtyard with no walls would be impervious to tumah. Still, the Tana here writes in the style of En Tzarich Lomar, right? Why? But some add that this ruling can be regarding the flat courtyard can also be applied back to the previous Mishnah where the courtyard was attached to the stove. The novelty is that even a flat courtyard that is cemented to the stove is not considered legally connected to the stove and is therefore ruled as tahor. Interesting that even though it's flat, because normally we say that earthenware, it needs a receptacle to become tameh.
The rim, something hold it back.
It needs to have some kind of rim. So this must be talking about a rabbinic tumah, because it's not as a kli, it should not be able to receive tumah. But we do have some cases which we'll see later on in the Mishnah about if you have like a work surface, just like a tray that you normally work on, that even though it's completely flat, Chazal made it tameh because it's used like a kli.
What kind of tumah did you say? You said a different kind of tumah. I didn't hear it so well.
Rabbinic.
Oh, rabbinic. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pit pute kira. So the feet of the stove. Okay. 2 different opinions, as you see, according to Rav and according to Rambam, whether they're on the bottom of the stove or on the top. But the question that we're going to have is, in the airspace between those feet, does that contract tumah? Okay, shalosh etzbaos, if they're 3 finger breadths high. Okay, mitamim b'maga u ba'avir. So these may become tame both through touch and through their airspace. Pachos mikan kol sheken hen tmeim va'afilu hen arba'a. And if they're less than this, then they're certainly tame. And even when there are 4 feet. So basically the closeness to the stove is what makes it tame. So it's not like you have a minimum height of whatever. So we're saying that these things are considered functional parts of the stove, whether they're according to Rav, if they're feet that are giving the oven a little bit of height, or they're according to Rambam, they're props that you can put your stove your pot on top of.
That's the airspace there, right? Yeah.
Right, that airspace in between them is still tame. Okay. Nital echad mehen. If one of the feet was removed, mitamin b'maga v'ena mitamin ba'avir, divrei Rabbi Meir. So they still transmit tumah by touch, but not through airspace anymore, says Rabbi Meir. And Rabbi Shimon mitayr, and Rabbi Shimon says this is completely tower. They're no longer usable for their proper function, and therefore they should they do not contract tumah by any form.
You know what the Rambam was in the diagram? It shows one opinion of the Rav and the Rambam.
This is coming up next.
Okay.
If you made 2 feet, if you made the oven lechatchila with 2 feet, but they're 2 broad feet, so that you can actually rest it properly. In the beginning of our Mishna is talking about there were 3 feet and one of them broke off, so the oven would now be resting at an angle. Okay, now this case is made lechatchila to stand on 2 feet, or in either Rab or Rambam's fashion. Okay, itamim b'maga u ba'avir. They receive tumah both by touch and by airspace. Divrei Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Shimon still rules them tahor. Okay, interestingly, as in his early opinion, Rabbi Shimon rules that the remaining 2 feet are impervious to tumah in any manner and will remain tahor even if the stove is rendered tameh by contact. That's interesting, because his previous reasoning. Let's just look at his previous reasoning. As a general principle, he says whenever there's no connection on a biblical level between a stove and its feet, the Chazal did not make a decree of tum on them either. So and he says over here that the halacha in all these cases involving the feet of the stove follows the view of Rabbi Meir. Interesting. Okay. Now, what happens if these things were higher than 3 finger breadths? So if the legs were higher, then only the area that's within the 3 finger breadths of the stove receives tumah by airspace. The rest, and any more than that is just by touch, says Rabbi Meir, and Rabbi Shimon is mitayr. And now, where's Rabbi Shimon's disagreement? Is he disagreeing about the whole thing or just about above the 3 tvachim? So the footnote clarifies and says the area of the foot that is more than 3 finger breadths from the stove is not considered part of the stove at all and is thus completely impervious to tumah. Others understand that when a foot is higher than 3 finger breadths, Rabbi Shimon rules the entire foot tahor. Okay, so we're not going to get clarity on that, but there are two opinions on that. Now, what happens if they are not in line with the edge of the stove? So as you can see on the diagram on the next page,
Right.
Okay, if it's still within 3 finger breadths, mitamin b'maga v'avir, and it still is tame by touch and by airspace. Chutz mishalosh etzbaos mitamin b'maga v'ena mitamin ba'avir. Divrei Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Shimon mitahar. Once again, it's the same opinions. Rabbi Meir makes the distinction about less than 3 finger breadths, more than 3 finger breadths. If it's tower and outside the 3 finger breadths, it's only mitame by touch. And again, Rabbi Shimon is mitahar completely. Okay, so now we've been talking about becoming tamei in the airspace. Now the Mishnah asks, well, Keitzad Misharin Nosan, how do you measure that airspace? You've got 3 legs. Where's the airspace between them? Okay. Rabban Shimon bin Gamliel Omer nosen es hakana beinehem. You take a ruler and put it between the legs. Minakana v'lachutz tahor, minakana v'lifnim umakom hakana tame. So you can see you basically draw a straight line between the legs at the 3 finger breadth level. Okay, you can see the diagram at the bottom of page 334 with the dotted line over there that shows the airspace, which is basically taken from the 3 finger breadth level. You draw a straight line to the next leg at the 3 finger breadth level, and everything inside that triangle is considered airspace.
Mm-hmm.
So now you see that's according to Rav, and according to Rambam is on the next page. You take a look at the top there. Now, hang on, why is Rav talking about a circle? Minakana. Didn't see that before. Just scanning to try and find that explanation of Rambam. Oh, Rambam commentaries and understanding here on page 335, second column of the commentary.
I have
Rambam's understanding of the procedure outlined in the Mishnah. First, he maintains that the word kana refers to a base, not a ruler. Okay, it's a kioves kano. Many stoves sat on a circular earthenware slab that served as a base that was commonly designed with a radius 3 finger breadths greater than the radius of the stove it supported. This may be identical with the kelet, the stove base of Mishnah 1. Thus, when a stove was centered upon its base, 3 finger breadths of the base protruded from beneath the bottom edge of the stove on all sides. Some understand that this base resembled a disc. Okay. Rambam, as mentioned earlier, maintains that the feet were located at the top of the stoves. Therefore, to determine the airspace of these feet, the circular base was lowered onto the feet from above and centered over the top of the stove. Everything from the rim of the stove to the outer edge of the base was considered to be within the 3 finger breadths of the stove, while everything beyond the base was considered outside 3 finger breadths. Okay, so that explains the diagram on page 336, and that's it for today. Okay, let's go to Gimel Zayin.
A boiler was at one coated with mortar or potter's clay. That which touches the mortar is tummy, and while that which touches the potter's clay is tahor. A kettle that developed a hole and one repaired it with pitch, where Rashi rules it tahor, but it cannot hold hot liquids, and it does in cold liquids. And that is how he used to quote rule concerning the utensils of pitch. Copper utensils coated with pitch or tahor, but it meant wine, or if it meant wine, tummy. A barrel that developed a hole and one repaired it with more pitch than necessary, that which touches the necessary pitch is tummy, that which touches the unnecessary pitch is tahor. Pitch was dripped onto a barrel, that which touches it is tahor. And a wooden or earthenware funnel that was plugged with pitch, but Elazar ben Azariah rules them tummy, where Rekuah rules the funnel tummy, but rules the earthenware funnel tahor. Roshi rules both of them tahor. So I read it wrong. Okay. An earthenware fragment that cannot stand because of its handle has a protrusion, and the protrusion tilt is tahor. If the handle were removed or the protrusion broke off, it is still tahor. Rabbi Yehuda rules it tummy. A barrel whose bottom fell out but is able to contain on 2 walls, or is split and became like 2 troughs, Rabbi Yehuda rules it tahor, but the sages rule it tummy.
Yeah.
Tummy. Okay, yes. From Yeriko, they would hear the sound of the great gate being opened. From Yeriko, they would hear the sound of the shovel. From Yeriko, they would hear the sound of the wood that Ben Cotton fashioned into a wheel for the labor. From Yeriko, they would hear the sound of the Gavina, the crier. From Jericho, they would hear the sound of the flute. From Yeriko, they would hear the sound of the cymbals. From Yeriko, they would hear the sound of the Levium song. And from Yeriko, they would hear the sound of the shofar. And some would say, all the sound of the Kohen Gadol when he mentions the name of God on Yom Kippur. From Yeriko, they would smell the fragrance of the compounded incense. Eliah ben Digla said they would go to my father's house on the mountain on Mikvar, and they would seize because of the fragrance of the compounded incense. The Kohen who won the privilege of clearing the ashes of the inner altar entered and took the basket and placed it in front of himself, and he would scoop up the ashes and place them into the basket. And at the end, he swept the breast inside it. And if he left the basket and went out. The Kohen who won the privilege of clearing the ashes from the menorah entered the Hekel, and if he found the two eastern lamps burning, he would clear the ashes from the rest of the lamps and would leave. Leave those two burning in their place. He found that the two eastern lamps were extinguished. He would clear the ashes and relight them from those that were still burning, and afterward he would clear the ash from the rest. And there was a stone in front of the menorah in which there were 3 steps, upon which the Kohen would stand and prepare the lamps. They would place the jug on the second step and exit. They would not tie up the lamb, rather they would bind it a Keilim style. Whoever won the privilege of carrying the lamb, the limbs would hold the lamb, and this is how the lamb was positioned in its binding. Its head pointed to the south, its face to the west. The slaughter was down to the east side, and his face was toward the west. The tummy of the morning was slaughtered by the northwest corner of the altar on the second ring, and the tummy of the evening was slaughtered at the northwest corner on the second ring. The slaughterer was slaughtered, and the receiver of the blood received it. He came to the northeast corner of the altar and would apply the blood to the east, and to the north he came to the southwest corner, and he would apply this blood to the west and to the south. The Kohen would pour the remainder of the blood onto the southern base of the altar.
Okay. Keilim. Yes, hey.
A marrow bone of a corpse or a marrow bone of a sacrificial lamb, if one touches them, either closed or punctures his tummy. The marrow bone of a nevela or a marrow bone of a sheret, if one touches them, they are closed. And when they are closed, they are tahor. If they are punctured at all, they convey tumor through contact. How do we know that the same applies to carrying? Because Scripture states, "He who touches is, and he who one carries." Whatever comes in contact with the scope of tumor through contact comes with the scope of tumor through carrying. Whatever does not come within the scope of tumor through contact does not come within the scope of tumor through carrying. The egg of a sheret in which an embryo has been found is tahor. If it has been punctured even slightly, it's tummy. The mouse has a half flesh and half earth. A mouse that has half flesh and half earth. If one touches the flesh, he's tummy. If one touches the earth, he's tahor. But Yehuda says, even if he touches the earth opposite the flesh, he is tummy. The limb and the flesh that dangle on an animal convey the tumor of foods in their place, but require preparation. The animal is slaughtered, they become prepared through its blood. These are the words of Meir, and Reb Shimon says they do not become prepared. If the animal dies, the flesh requires preparation, but the limb does not. The limb conveys tumor as a limb of a live creature, but does not convey tumor as a limb of a nevela. These are the words of Reb Meir, but Reb Shimon declares a tahor.
Okay.
To Baba Basra. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel said in regard to what was stated, in regard to moist commodities. However, in the case of dry ones, it's not necessary. He is obligated to overbalance the kales and breadth in the bag by his favor. If he was weighing for them evenly, he must give them the extra weight 1 to 10 from moist, 1 to 10 for moist commodities, 1 to 20 for dry ones. In a place where it's customary to measure with a small measuring, he may not measure with a large one. With a large one, he may measure with a small one. In a place where it's customary to level, he may not keep. To heap, he may not level. If one would sell produce to another, and it did not grow, even if there were these seeds of flax, he is not liable. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, in the case of garden seeds which are not eaten, he is liable. If one sells produce to another, he accepts upon himself a quarter cob of refuse per sa. With figs, he accepts upon himself 10 worthy ones per 100. With a seller of wine, he accepts upon himself 10 souring ones per 100. With jaws and Sharon, he accepts upon himself 10 inferior ones per 100.
Okay.
And we have Yoma. Well, the administrator said to them, "Go out and see if the time of slaughtering has arrived. If it has arrived, the one who sees it says, okay." Matas ben Shmuel says the whole of
We just saw this in Maseches Tamid. The same
thing.
Yeah.
Matas ben Shmuel says the whole of he says lit up as far as Hebron, and he says yes. Why was this necessary? Because one time the moon's light rose and they thought that the east had lit up, but they slaughtered the day of the sacrifice and then had to take it out to the place of burning. They took the Kohen Gadol down to the mikvah, and this was the rule in the temple. Whoever moved his bowels needed immersion. Whoever urinated needed to wash his hands and feet. No person may enter the temple court of a service if he has tahor, if he has immersed himself in a mikvah. On this day, the Kohen Gadol immerses himself 5 times and washes his hands and feet 10 times. All of them are the holy atop the parva kema, except for this holy.
Okay. Yadayim, aleph base.
I have a, what did you say? Oh, no wonder, okay. We're skipping Aleph, we did it yesterday.
Yes,
Is that what you
yeah.
said?
Aleph base.
One may pour onto the hands from all types of vessels, even from dung vessels, from the saint's own vessels, from mud vessels. But one may not pour onto the hands from the walls of vessels, nor from the bottom of an earthenware bucket, nor from the cover of a barrel, nor may one pour onto the hands of the friend from his own cupped hands. Because we may not draw water from mekatos, we may not consecrate mekatos, nor may we sprinkle mekatos, nor may we pour onto the hands except with a vessel. Nothing with a sealed cover can protect its contents between it except vessels, and nothing can protect foodstuff from contracting tumor from an earthenware vessel except vessels. Regarding water that became unfit for an animal to drink, if it is in vessels, it is valid, but if it's in the ground, it is valid. This is Kazar, correct? Because we already did Aleph yesterday.
Yeah, carry on. We're doing two more.
All right. If ink, gum, or coppers fell into the water and its color changed, it is invalid. If one used the water for any manner of work, or he soaked it in his bread, it is invalid. Shimon the Timonite says if he intended to soak in his water and fell into a different water, it is valid.
One more.
If one rinsed utensils in the water or he scrubbed measures with the water, it is invalid. However, he rinsed it in the water, utensils were already rinsed, so they were new. The water is valid, the dosing invalidates the water in the case of new utensils. Okay.
Okay.
I thought going to Aleph and you were going to do these as new ones. That's what I thought. Okay.